So what was you asking about, like kind of when to how do you know whether to go like surface level or deep? Like how deep do you go was the question, right? Was there anything more?
Yeah, I think for me, there's kind of that in between where I don't know how deep they should be doing versus on their sets or a qualification versus the closer, like on who calls the responsibility, right? I understand, of course, if there's a call on the closer calendar, the goal is to build as much leverage, urgency through the questions, get the emotions, the buy-in, the tie downs. I get all of that. And then on the set call, how much do you need to be like, okay, why is this important for you to do something about X, Y, and Z situation, goal, pain point, whatever, right this second, as opposed to just keep kicking the can down the road, right? Versus more of a logistical based question of, yeah, okay, in regards to this project, do you see any reasons why you could not get started today, right? So it's less an emotional based question. It's more like a pre-handle of trying to remove objections ahead of the closer call to know, okay, do I set this person or not? But I'm not trying to build urgency with the way I ask the question, like emotionally. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So like in terms of
Yeah.
the depths that you want as far as an answer before you're like, okay, I set this person or I don't based on the urgency of the change or the desire.
Yeah, so it's kind of like I think what you're suggesting there is like just more like verifying, just based on like where the person's at, like what their intentions are, and that's important as well. However, like at the end of the day, I know that in the start of the journey, the person's at the top of funnel. My goal is to reconnect to why they even want to start this, because then that's going to re-engage their brain to be more focused on like what they're actually solving for. Um, and then from there it's them understanding and figuring out how important it is for them to actually want to solve for anything, because as a setter for me, I want every set that I put through to show up, and that's going to come from understanding how committed they actually are, how problem aware, how solution aware, and that comes from understanding a bit more about like why now, like what will actually hold you back from getting started, like all those questions that gauge the commitment levels. So I do want to go like relatively deep, but if I'm on like one core concept that maybe it does need reframing, the prospect's mindset is totally like out of bounds as far as like they just need to be reworked and reframed. As a setter, I don't want to reframe them. That's what the closer would do. But what I would want to do is know if they're open to a different way of thinking. So I'll give you an example on a call. You might get a prospect that is like, I tried these other businesses before, but like it was really saturated. So many people were doing it, so that's why I couldn't be successful. It's like, okay, fair. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I guess, was it the fact that the industry was saturated, or you just didn't know how to differentiate yourself from the market, though? Right. And it's then you give them an all question where they clearly understand that it's like it's on them and they could have done better. And if they buy into that, then they're at least open to like taking responsibility. So what I want to understand is how much did the person actually take extreme ownership for their decisions versus blame? If people blame, then typically I'm not going to set those people because they just don't take responsibility. They're not going to be high action threshold guys. So I want to understand like the person's willingness to take action, responsibility, and those are great notes for the closers.
But
Uh,
you're more gonna dig just to get context, but you're not gonna challenge their way of thinking necessarily.
I'm not going to try and reframe
You're
it or
just
change
gonna do it as a temp check more so to see where
them.
they're at mentally.
Exactly. And it's more so like the way that I look at every set call is I'm trying to play the devil's advocate. Like I want to understand what are the red flags that will prevent this person from making an optimal decision. And then from there, like highlight those things to the closers as like, right, what are some potential objections that could come up in this call? They are committed, yes, but these are some of the roadblocks that are holding them back. And so I would
Mm.
recommend going deeper on X, Y, and Z. So you're just kind of going through, right, I found an issue, like what's holding them back. They've procrastinated a lot in the past. They need to be there needs to be tie-ins and frames in the call that focus on them taking action sooner to be the best they can be, as opposed to procrastinating. Like you just make their job easy by letting them know what objections could come up. And I will just literally get clarity on the thing that's holding them back, and that's it. One
Mm.
or two probing questions, that's it. I won't go any deeper. But I don't want
Hmm.
to change and try and change their mind and reframe skillfully like the closers would do in like identity frames through the call, right? I won't go that
Hmm.
crazy.
Okay.
Uh, right.
I'm curious, does that help you guys on your end?
Yeah,
Because
it
that's
does.
kind of for
Yeah.
me, it's a line that I don't know I know the closers have to do that for sure, but then it's like, okay, do you guys have to do any of that or no? Or to which extent, right? So I think it's more unpacking
Yeah.
and getting clarity, and then from there you decide, okay, do I push this person through or not? And like we've been discussing the past 2 weeks, it's like um, give them benefit of doubt. If you think there's an opportunity and there's a chance that, again, there's something to be made there, then if there's like absolutely no chance, then of course we're not going to set them. But if there's you see an opportunity in a way that the closer could be working on either the mindset, the way they view things, or through educating them about real estate or whatever we do, then they could be taking action, for example, then let's set them. Let's keep them on the calendar.
Yeah, 100%. And like, what helps you guys to understand if the person like has those red flags that can, prevent them from making the decisions is really looking at like their past actions and behaviors, and then their current mindset and situation, right? So that's where I want to get a lot more clarity. So you might make your calls where it's like, oh, okay, what got you interested? And then you go into what they do for a living, like their situation. Sometimes just stay in that situation phase for a little bit if you feel like you need more clarity just based on where that person's at. And it makes it easier for you to find a potential challenge, right? Of like what's held them back from making that start. What are some of the things that they dislike about what they do? And then from there, it's figuring out like from there, are they willing to take responsibility and are they actually wanting to do something now as opposed to later on, right? Because that's another big thing. I don't want to put somebody on the calendar that's like wants to make a decision in a year and a half, just like that military guy, right? So it's the best way to get into urgency is develop it from a challenge that they take ownership of, and that it's something that gets them on an emotional level where they really want to run away from the situation or move towards their goal. That's where that urgency question lands a lot, right? For an example, if somebody goes into like a surface level, what's holding you back? They say, and then we say, okay, but why now? Why do we want to do something? And oftentimes you'll get a very surface level answer. It won't land a lot, and you won't be actually convinced that person meant what they said. Versus when you find a challenge, you clarify words within what they're saying that like signify emotion. For example, oh, it's pretty stressful. That's pretty tough. It's so up and down right now. It's inconsistent. Whatever that problem might be, you probe into it, and then from there, when you say, okay, but like this being said, like you've actually dealt with this for the last 2 years. You've been settling for these standards for this long. What is it that actually makes now the time to make a change? Because you've been settling for it for so long. And that question comes across more powerful because you've got more context on that issue. So that's why I'd always recommend going that bit deeper, but figure out more context from situation, dive into more of the problem, and then you can find the urgency from there. And those are great notes for the closers. They'll really appreciate that, and they'll just know where to pick up on in the call.
I'm curious for the setters, do you guys, when you find some potential obstacles and objections, do you guys put the notes in the CRM of like, hey, this is something that came up on our call, just make sure you check that with them. Otherwise that could be the objection, for example.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Cool.
Sometimes I even trying to dig a little bit deeper to know exactly why. And I also try sometimes to just remove the objection by myself, but I think I should stop doing that. Or should I still continue or?
What objections do you typically? Well, I'll say objections. They're more just so like concerns or doubts, right? Like, well, what are the main things that you typically get on calls?
But it depends on the price.
Okay, and that's the beginning, or is it the end? Like, what's the context?
No. That's when and I ask them, okay,
call,
so
basically.
yeah, when I pitch the call, yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I mean, because when you do pitch the call, I'm assuming you'd already go through like a financial qualifier, right? Because that is important to address beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on that, how come at the end they're asking you what's the price? Like, it depends on the price then. Like, do we not tell them the price or are open with it?
No, but like I usually tell them, okay, like if we're able like to build a plan based on your personal situation right now, and you see with the plan you can get to your objective that you want with the real estate, is this something that you'll be able to give like 2 or 3 hours per week to get coach to get a coach and training for that? They say yes, but again, it would depend on the price of basically what is the price that you offer for for the coaching.
That puts you in a difficult position if you get that at the end, right? Like I want to address that issue before they do. Like, you know, at the very end, I want to do that in the financial qualification part, right? Because that's going into like a time qualifier, right? So it's like the time qualifier, I wouldn't necessarily attach it to like coaching, but it's more so like as far as doing this kind of a business alongside your job, we recommend that you invest at least like 2 to 3 hours a week, 5 to 10 hours, whatever that looks like. Is that something that you could put aside, assuming that this all makes sense for you, right? And at that point, there's, you know, they wouldn't really mention the price. They've just totally mistranslated the question, right? And then from there, if you've got that time commitment, they're good there. Then I'm just bringing it up. Like, I'm sure you can appreciate that with any business model, it typically takes that money to make money. Is that something that we have considered, is actually putting aside capital to invest into our business so we can hit 10 to 15K a month? You know, have we actually considered or looked or thought about it? We have. Okay, and just help me understand, like, as far as starting your business so you can get to that goal, what do we have set aside just so I can make the best recommendation for you? Right, because what we're trying to do is point them in the right direction. Do we need to work with them for them to get resourceful so they can gather the money, or do they have the minimum available that we can potentially work with them on a payment plan or whatever that looks like? So
Yeah, but I don't know, like if it's me, but I think here in Quebec, like when people look for example real estate coaching or most of them want to have free stuff. And when we pitch something, like they always think that it's fraud or we just want to steal the money or something like that.
that'll be a lot of leads, but that's your job, is to filter through the ones that are like, it's a scam, or I want a free course or $100. That's your job, is to filter through those until you find the people that are actually open to it, right? And those people, like, even if they do feel like it is, it's giving them the resources and understanding that eventually it's to see if they're even open to that different way of looking at things. But typically in setting roles, you have to work through a bunch of those people in order to find the gold, the ones that are even at least a bit open and understanding of it. So that's just normal, to be honest. Here in the UK, very much so, because people just want everything for free. They're very entitled. We hate investing into stuff. We think everything's a scam. It's weird, right? So yeah, I think that's part and parcel of the role, right? And if you do get it and you get it more often than you should, then that's good feedback for the marketing team. You know, hey, I've got 10 meaningful conversations today. 8 of them told me that this is a scam. I want nothing to do with it. Like, I wanted a free course. And that, what that tells you is that the marketing isn't setting the right expectations for people that come through the funnel. And that feedback's really important for the marketing team. It means we can then adjust some of the scripting, editing, some of the content so that the right types of people do come in, right? Because this role, transparently is a very it's like a very marketing reliant role. If the marketing isn't done right, your job is extremely difficult. But the only way that the marketing can be corrected is by data driven and regular feedback, right? If we don't have that feedback, then you'll just be dealing with the same sucky leads, and the marketing team will assume that they've done everything right. If there's no conversions, then they'll blame you guys, which is not necessarily fair, right? But if you give data driven feedback, then they can understand it, right? And by data driven feedback, I don't mean, oh, the leads are really bad today. Like, that's got to be the last thing that you guys ever say, right?
We have to bring reason.
Yeah, and tracked data driven feedback always.
Yeah.
Over a couple of weeks is always good, 1 to 2 weeks. So yeah, hopefully that helps.